I used to be that person who always wanted to go exploring abandoned places, but just never did. My excuse was that life got in the way, but the truth was that I was just lazy and scared. During the weekend, one of my friends suggested checking out a creepy abandoned hospital a few miles away from where I lived. I asked him what was so creepy about it, but he only said to wait until I had arrived. What I didn't expect was to arrive in the middle of the night. To be more precise, midnight. We only had one torch between us both, and I can now understand why it was creepy. Not only was it surrounded by a forest, it also had so many floors, around 6 that I could see just by looking up, also noticing smashed windows, giving it a very cold feeling. From what I told myself was that it was empty. At least it should be, right? I'm sure your mind played tricks on you, even before you step inside. But my friend quickly assured going at night was the best time, because there's always a chance to get spooked. So my mind was already racing. Just to clarify, my friend loved making jokes, and loved winding me up. So I didn't pay too much attention when he used the word spooked. At this point, and without my friend seeing, I took quite a hard swallow before straightening up my back and following him inside. He held the torch. I just held myself together. Immediately upon entering through what I presumed was a back door to a surgical wing, I got a very uneasy vibe. You could chalk it up to me being scared, and I was. But it was something else. You know the feeling when the hairs in your arms and neck stand up, and that chilling cold feeling of someone watching you from afar? That was it. We heard the odd noises I think all old buildings made, and as we checked out a few rooms, spotting only a lot of graffiti and broken items on the ground, my friend walked off into another room and quickly called me over. To my surprise, we found a dead cat. Now I don't want to make any of you feel sick, but it looked as if someone had tried to eat it. I had to turn away as I couldn't look at it for much longer, and the smell was horrendous. My friend came over and said we should get going, but then we heard a laugh echo. It wasn't us. Of course it wasn't us. We looked at each other wondering if what we heard was actually what we heard. Then the laugh came again, but this time sounded closer. It came from a very dark corner in the same room we were in. I could see my friend shaking as the torch shook so much as they slowly panned over the darkness. My heart was pounding. I was on full alert, and as the light shone light into the dark, we saw someone lunge towards us. I jumped back. We both screamed and ran for it. I could not tell you what they looked like, but we booked it as fast as we could. Getting back to the car and stopping for a breather, whoever they were didn't follow us out. But we refused to go back inside. After a few days though, we returned with some more friends. This time in a day. But we only found the remainder of the cat still lying in the room. Whoever was there was now gone, or at least gone for now. It was snowing. I loved the snow. What was weird was that it was snowing in March. I guess climate change is a thing. I live in the UK, so in a way, it's kind of usual to expect snow later. Or so that's what I and a few others expect. Anyway, there is an abandoned house that sat alone in a country field, and apparently was quite a marvel, even though it had been abandoned for over 20 years. The house still stood strong. Let me give a quick breakdown of the past owner. They were a butcher, and the story that went around the local town was that whoever came onto his land, he would capture them and then butcher them for food. So yes, I guess we are talking about a real life cannibal here. Now, I don't think that this story is true. Most people like hyping up stories to make them sound scarier than what they actually are. But because I was told I live in such denial, that I should go and check it out. Alone. Now I don't get scared easy, and I happily agreed on going alone. But the weather was horrible to drive in, and because the house sat in the middle of fields, it was going to be a challenge getting there on its own. But if I could do it in this weather and prove nothing is there, then maybe I could be the party pooper and put an end to this urban myth. So, like no time like the present, I got myself dressed up warm and headed off in the car. Thankfully, there was a dirt road that led around the hallway into the fields, so I only had to walk a small distance to the house. The sun was setting by the time I had arrived, and the first thing I noticed was that the house had a charisma about it. Old-fashioned, but very elegant. I could see how it would have looked back when it was up and running, and I think I would have liked it. Upon entering the home though, pushing the door that creaked ever so loudly, echoing into the hallway, I found the same could not be said inside. Vandals had ruined the place. Things were smashed up, graffiti everywhere, and weirdly had arrows pointing to where the butchering would have occurred. No surprises, it was down in the basement. So that's where I went. Brave, confident, and very stupid, I turned on my headlight and made my way down. There was a metal bed still lying centre to the room, with plastic curtains draped around it. It looked like a classic murder film, and I now didn't feel too comfortable. I then heard walking above me. They ran up the stairs, and then I heard them come back down, as I told myself that nobody surely was here with me. I stepped backwards towards the closet wall and spotted that a lot of the basement windows had been smashed. What didn't occur to me was that the glass was still on the floor, and as I stepped backwards, I stood on something that made a very loud noise, and the footsteps stopped dead. I froze, even holding my breath as everything now felt tense. Then he started to run towards the basement, and I am talking a very quick run. I took this opportunity to get the hell out of there through one of their broken windows. I ended up cutting my hands as I pulled myself through, not knowing if they were down in the basement with me or not. Till when I got out of the house and ran a little, I looked back and saw a pair of eyes staring back at me in the basement window I crawled out of. I tell you, it was extremely frightening, and to this day, I told my friends what I saw, with them jumping to every opportunity to say it was the butcher. I still think it was someone else, someone who wanted to do harm, but they insisted otherwise. I'll leave you to decide what you think it was. So it was that time to go exploring. I was an avid explorer and loved checking out places that once was. On this occasion, I was going to be exploring alone, as one or two of my friends were unwell, and I was only in this town for a few more days. There was a mall I did some research on that had been left abandoned for quite some time, and I jumped at the chance to go and explore it. Surprisingly, there were no guards surrounding the area, and from what I could tell, you could simply just walk on a bed without any problems. The exploration went as expected too. Looked around, learned more about the mall and its history before coming to the end of my little activity. Now I took the time to sit down in one of the shops to have some food and just take in what I was seeing around me. It was daytime when I came to visit this place, but being in the autumn, things got darker quicker, and I was now sitting in dusk. As I sat eating my food, I heard a group of people talking. I leaned my head back a little as I left the door open, allowing me to see them from afar. They looked like they were up to no good, and so I packed my food away, chucked on my backpack, and carefully watched, listening to them talk about my car being parked close, and someone must be in this mall exploring it. I felt panicked as one of them said if I was alone, they would kill me. They laughed and joked, but I don't take those things as a joke. I was alone, and I was also trapped, stuck in this corner room out of the way with no back door to escape. I don't know how long it took for them to go off and start searching, but two went off on the upper floors, and the last one roamed around out in the open on the same floor as myself. I knew I had to move, and so watched this guy for a few minutes to see how he moved about himself. Then I took my chance and walked out of the store and around into another one, bouncing in and out of stories like that very carefully until I felt like I could make a break for the exit. The only problem I now faced was that the car sat in the opposite direction of where I currently sat. But the guy who was supposed to be searching the ground floor didn't seem too bothered and looked lazy, so I peeked my head up over a worktop and heard a gun being shot. I quickly dropped to the floor and then stood back up, running for my life as I heard them call after me, shouting and yelling. I heard one of them say that he just wanted to talk, but I ran for my life. I ran so much that nothing was in my mind except to survive. After what I thought was long enough, I dived into a nearby bush and huddled down as I could still hear one of them calling after me. I assumed him to be the youngest, the one that was on the ground floor with myself. I huddled down as much as I could while I waited for him to go back with the others. When the other two did catch up, they were arguing amongst themselves, and I could hear them fighting and being quite aggressive, knowing I had to go away. I left my car there for a few days, more because I was frightened beyond belief, but obviously I had to leave, so I had to go back to get my car. To my surprise, the car was okay. Nothing wrong with it at all. Thankfully, I never saw them guys again, and I'm a bit more cautious when I go out exploring.